Hello everybody, Dante here. Hope everybody's having a fantastic day. I haven't been live here in a little while, but I wanted to give it another shot. So welcome to this video. I'm going to be talking about the astrology of this upcoming, or this present eclipse, and the Venus retrograde that just started a couple days ago, as well as what we can look at into 2022. So I'll talk about generally how this looks, and then we'll go by ascendant sign. And you may have watched these videos in the past and noted that I've tried to do the readings by ascendant and got a little bit confused, but I've made up for that and outlined every ascendant and the placements exactly. So I'm prepared this time. So if you like these videos and you want to stay up to date, pardon me, I'm still kind of sick, you can go to DanteStarshine.com, and there will be a pop-up that will connect you to my email list, and you can sign up for my email list and stay up to date as to all of the happenings that are coming up, such as the weekly Livestream Channeling Session that continues again every Thursday. So in 2 days at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And pardon me if I'm a little bit out of sorts. Again, I am still having a cold. It's so much better than it has been. So I'm kind of still in that recovery process. Welcome whoever has just tuned in. And we'll get started in now. So today is the solstice, and the solstice is the shortest day of the year in the northern hemisphere. It's the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere, so the longest day of the year. And it is this time of kind of accessing the darkness and moving through some of those darker parts of ourselves, knowing that it is in the greatest darkness that we come to understand our inner light the most. So the solstice is a time of kind of seeing where we've come over the course of the year and since the last equinox and since the last solstice. So knowing that as we kind of plant the seeds now for what is to come, this can be a time where we see the greatest light. Not only that, we have this potent Venus retrograde, and Venus retrograde is a cycle that happens only every year and a half. Other planets retrograde much more often. Venus and Mars are the planets that retrograde a bit less often, so they are kind of more intense retrogrades. However, Venus being this benefic planet, the Venus retrograde cycle can be much more beneficial and can bring a lot of new energy into our lives. So Venus retrograde just began a couple of days ago, and it will last 40 days, but the shadow of Venus retrograde has already begun some weeks ago and carries into March. The shadow is the period before and after the retrograde, where Venus goes through the degrees that it has to review and then track back through during the retrograde. So the energy of it is not really over until Venus passes through the degree that it started its retrograde at, which this time is around 27 degrees of Capricorn. Beyond that, we have also this intense energy of the square between Uranus and Saturn, which is an ongoing thing. This is the third time it happens in 2021. It'll happen again in 2022. Saturn being the planet of control and authority, Uranus being the planet of rebellion and freedom. This is a rebellion against authority that can happen on inner levels and outer collective levels. And we see this through many of the ways that governments crack down very thoroughly and kind of extravagantly during these times. Of course, there is a real thing going around that is causing people to get truly sick, and there are ways that this is causing us to lose our freedom and many people to be really stuck and in very challenging circumstances in various parts of the world. And so this square has been correlated with a lot of these instances of rebellion and control, and in a couple of days we're going to see another exact square. So I'll go into detail on all of these things and then talk about it by ascendant placement through this video, so stay tuned. So first of all, what's happening in this exact moment of the solstice? I've got the chart pulled up. What comes most prominently into the forefront is the sun is sextile Jupiter, and together they are both in conjunct, or quincunx the moon. Sun sextile Jupiter is optimistic. It brings kind of this buoyancy and expansion, and the shadow of that is potential extravagance. It leads us to cultivate greater wisdom at this time. The in conjunction to the moon, in conjunctions are when planets are different mode, different element, and they can be sometimes this sort of awkwardness or stubbornness between planets that makes things challenging or confusing. But in that challenging or confusing nature, it highlights the importance of different ways of doing things. So the moon here is in Cancer in its domicile position, and the placement of the planets during the solstice is going to have an impact for some periods of time, basically up until the equinox. So this really highlights the importance of the moon, so our mental, emotional state for these next 3 months. It says that there can be some tension on our mental, emotional state, even from this Jupiterian aspect. So our wisdom, our higher knowing, even can be causing tension to our mental, emotional state. And it's good to bring importance to that and focus on that. There is also this placement of Venus opposing the moon, so that can create this tension between the two feminine planets. They both are kind of doing opposite things, but it does also make them work together. So it might be a time to bring greater attention, love, and care to your inner emotional well-being, which is important for everybody, as of course these times are bringing out both the best and worst in people, and what we really need to do is learn to care deeper for ourselves. That's ultimately the bigger message that's been coming through since the real beginning of these times, is how do we care for ourselves and how do we care for each other? How do we move past a culture of dominance and hustle into a time of self-care, self-nurture, self-understanding? And that's going to be highlighted again in these times. There is many other aspects going on, and which other ones am I interested in? There's the aspect of Saturn square to Mars, or Saturn sextile Mars, so that does make it a fruitful time for action and taking appropriate action steps in any given direction. Mars is about action and will, and Saturn is about things that take place over a long period of time, or potential obstacles or restrictions. So it's a placement of coming against obstacles and restrictions, pushing against them, and it's also about working with them to come to the best results regardless of what obstacles are actually in place. There is Mercury trine to Uranus, and Uranus is square to Saturn again, which I've spoken about a little bit and we'll go further into. But essentially Mercury trine Uranus is allowing our logical mind to pick up on higher knowing. It's perhaps bringing words to this very Uranus deals with things that are otherworldly and transcendental, and unconventional. So allowing this logical mind to put to words what is unconventional and otherworldly, and breaking the norm, coming into some higher knowing and understanding. These planets are usually in sort of a natural opposition to each other, so when they come into a harmonious relationship, it really means that we have the opportunity to bring this rational mind, which usually keeps us stuck in the world of the senses and logic, and break through those barriers into metaphysical understanding and communicate that. So this is especially important because of that Saturn-Uranus square. This happens on the 23rd. And again, it's happened several times this year, and it is about rebellion. And we might see right before this new year that there's certain regulations that are put into place again that or even just regulations that become tighter, that hold back travel, movement, expression, or going out and about without certain documents of medical experiences and so on. So it's important to be aware of that and be aware that in this times to come that might continue, especially because now Uranus is retrograde, and when Uranus is retrograde, the planet becomes weaker. So normally Uranus is an outer planet, further out than Saturn beats Saturn, but this time, because Uranus is closer in, or Uranus is retrograde, it has less strength. And so Saturn has a one-up on Uranus just this time around. Now, Uranus and Saturn will square each other again in May, and that time it can be a very positive, freeing influence, because Uranus will be direct, and Saturn will be probably by that point in its pre-shadow phase. So Uranus has again the upper hand on Saturn. That's the last of the squares, and that means that Uranus will be victorious throughout all of the squares and allow for greater freedom to settle into place. So that's essentially what's up with the solstice. And know that this is moving into Capricorn season. So Capricorn season is a time of being more serious, more practical, moving through the darkness and coming into tune with our true ambitions, coming in tune with the self-image we put out in the world, coming to climb the top of the mountain and work with our ambitions and our pragmatic energies. And of course this depends on where Capricorn lands in your chart, which I'll talk about in the next part, where we look at the Ascendant and the predictions based on Ascendant. Though let's look at the Venus retrograde, because that's another important thing that's happening. Again, Venus retrograde happens every year and a half. The last time Venus was in retrograde was in Gemini, and that was in May and June of 2020. In Gemini, it was all about learning and gaining new perspectives and new ideas, and maybe even new friendships and relationships. And Gemini is either twins or it's lovers, so it could have been a more romantic time for Venus retrograde. However, Venus retrograde always brings challenges in relationships. Retrograde brings review of the themes associated with the planet. So Venus's themes are love, relationship, wealth, money, abundance, beauty, and truth. So there's a review of these themes that's taking place, and now this time it's in very practical Capricorn. And Capricorn is again connected to that very pragmatic energy. And not only is it that, but Venus is connected with Pluto at this time. And Pluto is this planet of the underworld. Pluto kind of purges and transforms whatever it touches. So Pluto is a long transitor, and Pluto has been in the sign of Capricorn for quite some time. And most astrologers connect Pluto and Capricorn with the end of the old way of doing things. It's the end of top-down authority. It's the end of hierarchy. It's the end of very old toxic patriarchal ways of doing things. And of course, when something ends, it is strengthened before it ends. We see the shadows highlighted before it can really transform and topple. So there's some more years of this transit taking place, and this Venus retrograde might highlight more of these themes at a collective level. It can also highlight how we are hooked into themes of patriarchy on a personal level, how that shows up in our own lives. So Venus and Pluto connection also highlights the love of sex, the love of power, the love of wealth. So it could be said that during this time you might see those themes come up in your life. You might notice perhaps where you have obsession with any of those things connected with Venus. It's a powerful time to review any obsessions we have with Venusian qualities and let those things transform. And This will take place over the next 40 days, or 39 at this point, and then it will again continue as Venus moves through its shadow period for the following days. So let us then look at this by sign. Just have to switch this on the screen. Okay. Okay. So Aries Ascendant puts Venus in the 10th house. And moving through the 10th house for Aries Ascendant, this is going to be a retrograde that really focuses on your career and your reputation in the world. You might be reviewing your image or reputation. There might be ways that you have been holding back certain realms of expression due to fear of your reputation. So it's time to review those things, and maybe it's a time for a shift in work. So talking about these other things coming up, one thing I didn't talk about in the video as a whole that's happening in the beginning of 2022 is the North Node shifting into the sign of Taurus, moving from Gemini to Taurus. That also means the South Node is moving from Sagittarius to Scorpio. This can be a whole video in and of itself, so I won't talk too thoroughly about that, but I will mention in this about how that applies to each sign. So the North Node moving from your 3rd to your 2nd house means that you might have completed this chapter of what it means to be relating to your friends and to your immediate network, and now your focus is moving more into the realm of your values and your wealth, your material possessions. There might be some craving for owning more, so it's important to look at that and hold it with sort of some impeccability, as the North Node can create some lustful energy, and it's important to always be aware that the North Node is guiding us toward destiny, but sometimes the North Node does that in very intense ways that we have to temper. Now, Jupiter is also moving signs into Pisces from Aquarius. Jupiter is domicile in Pisces, so it's very happy and performs well and brings great results there. So Jupiter moving out of your 11th house, when Jupiter leaves a house, it leaves a gift. You might receive the gift of resources from your work, or it might be the gift of an expanded network. And now Jupiter moving into the 12th house brings greater focus on your spirituality, your personal growth. 12th house is also about undoing, so it might be undoing old karmic patterns and mental patterns. And also Saturn and Uranus square. So Saturn in the 11th house of networks and collective energies, square to the Uranus in the 2nd house. You might be, again, searching for freedom in that area of your personal values and your possessions, and there might be tension from your community in how you seek that out. So refine the ways that you are creating that freedom, and know that it might be very important for you through this Uranus transit in the 2nd house to own your own things, find your own possessions, find your own worth. So for Taurus Ascendant, Venus retrograde in the 9th house, this is about knowledge and truth and personal understanding. Venus retrograde in the 9th house might bring you to expand outside of your comfort zone. It might invite you to travel or to discover something entirely new. It might bring you to want to study some mystical or spiritual understanding that is beyond your own, or a culture that is beyond your own. It could also bring you to begin a new sort of spiritual practice or ignite an old one. It is likely to challenge your beliefs and bring you to review your belief systems. The North Node now moving to the first house for a Taurus Ascendant does mean that there could be some sudden desire to review your identity, transform your identity, or change your appearance. Jupiter moving into the 11th house is bringing a great expansion into your network and to your greater collective connection to other people, into those that are important to you through your work. Jupiter leaving the 10th house brings perhaps blessings in your career that then expands into your greater network. Saturn in your 10th house squaring Uranus in your first could mean some tension between your career and your own sense of self. So it's important to have that power to express yourself powerfully, regardless of what impact it leads on your reputation, knowing that in a way that if you sacrifice yourself for your reputation, you're bringing an inauthentic expression into the world that really can't be maintained for so long. So Gemini Ascendant, that's my Ascendant. Venus in the 8th house. The 8th house is the house of mystery, the occult, darkness, other people's resources, sexuality, and all sorts of hidden and intense things. So this is a time to look at what is hidden. And this can be something hidden from your past. It can be something that you've let go of a long time ago. It can be a time of paying debts, whether that's actual debt or emotional debt, feeling indebted to certain times and spaces of your life or certain people, clearing the energy that you've taken on, and coming to understand your own dark side more. It of course depends on what planets you have there, but it is a more intense transit, but it will be one that's more greatly rewarding and will bring you greater understanding of yourself, though of course in this 8th house it can be a time where there's more introversion and reclusion. North Node moving to the 12th house for the Gemini Ascendant can mean some challenges in mental health. It can be a time where one is really searching inside for answers, when one's very connected to their dreams, when spirituality becomes much more important. Especially, again, Uranus is there in the 12th as well, so there is this sort of catalytic process of destabilizing old mental patterns to bring in the new ones. Jupiter in the 10th house means that for Gemini Ascendant, this is a really good time to expand one's career. And Jupiter just moving out of that 9th house means that one might have integrated certain beliefs and understandings to take them to the next level. Saturn there in that 9th house, squaring Uranus in the 12th, can mean that there's still challenges and beliefs that cause those mental health struggles, so it is important to clear out old belief systems for the Gemini Ascendant at this time. Cancer Ascendant, Venus in the 7th house. This is going to be a more classical sort of Venus retrograde for you, as the 7th house is a Venus-ruled house connected to intimate relationships. So for Cancer Ascendant, the Venus retrograde is all about relating to others and looking at patterns within the most intimate relationships, making sure to not cling too much to others or to not be avoidant either, and to really understand one's own relating patterns. North Node is in the 11th, and Uranus again is in the 11th, so can be a time of revolutionizing and gaining deeper understanding from one's networks and greater collective energies. And Jupiter in the 9th house is expanding belief systems, gaining new belief systems, new knowledge. Cancer Ascendant would do really well to study something new during this time and expand one's scope of knowledge, perhaps even travel or do something that's totally beyond what one understands and is used to. Saturn in that 8th house is also a time of kind of paying debts, releasing things, getting in touch with the darker aspects of things, knowing that does in a sense affect one's greater network as through that square to Uranus in the 11th. However, when we do our 8th house work, which is essentially shadow work, owning our taboo, owning our wild side, it does kind of free us to be less restricted and more open and more in touch with our darkness, so that we can be balanced and not one-sided and not inauthentic and hiding parts of ourselves. So Leo Ascendant, Venus retrograde in the 6th house, is about health, routines, and structures. It's a time to review the structures of your life and make sure that they're functioning in your favor. Are the things you're doing really serving you? Is the way that you live your day-to-day life adding to your health and mental well-being, or is it robbing you of it? Focusing on your health can be really beneficial at this time, as the 6th house is the house of health. So reviewing if everything is serving your health or not. Jupiter moving from that 7th house, perhaps bringing benefits of relationships, now moving to the 8th house, means that there's an expansion again into that occult realm for you. You might be having a sudden increase in your sex drive or a deeper interest in the occult. You might want to study some of the hidden things or get in touch with your own shadow at this time. Saturn in the 7th, square to Uranus in the 10th, can mean some relationship challenges affecting your career. So know that the relationship challenges will pass with the Saturn transit, and there is this desire to find freedom through your career. Focusing on your outer expression in the world will serve you at this time and can be a very powerful way to find freedom. Again, knowing that North Node is there as well, don't let that come from this excess craving or untempered desire. Do it with balance, as Saturn always asks for greater balance. Virgo Ascendant, Venus in the 5th house. This is kind of a great Venus retrograde because the 5th house is all about those things that we do for pleasure, fun, and in a sense self-satisfaction. It's about our self-expression, our art and creativity. So Venus retrograde here is inviting you to look deeper at your own creative expression and how that serves in the world. Can you harness your creative expression for the greater good? And perhaps review talents that have or have not been expressed so that you can bring them out in the world in healthy ways. Jupiter moving from the 6th to the 7th does mean perhaps moving past certain health challenges, integrating changes to your routine to move into greater harmony in your relationships. With Jupiter in the 7th, you might find sudden luck in relationships or sudden luck in your inner friend circle. Saturn in the 6th squaring Uranus in the 9th. This could bring health challenges with Saturn in the 6th squaring that Uranus. So Uranus and North Node in the 10th is 9th rather, is looking at freeing your knowledge, having perhaps new understandings, studying something new. And again, Uranus, as it's connected to undoing, 9th house is about belief systems, undoing past belief systems. And perhaps some of the struggles that you meet from the universe, which connect to Saturn, are simply ways that you might transform old belief systems and bring in new energy. So Libra Ascendant, Venus in that 4th house, this is connected to the past and connected to your heritage or to your home. So one way that this could manifest is changes to your home or changes to your inner family dynamic or changes to the way that you feel at home within yourself. For people who are nomadic like myself, the 4th house really connects with being at home within yourself and your true connection to your chosen family. So it could also be that manifestation. 4th house can also be the energy that's connected to our childhood, the ways that perhaps trauma or memory from our childhood affects our behaviors now. So Venus retrograde there can be a review of those things and a letting go of that. Uranus in the 8th, North Node in the 8th, can be about undoing patterns from the untamed dark side, getting in touch with those and learning how to harness our dark side. North Node there in the 8th house can sometimes indicate addiction, so it's important to watch out for addictions and watch out for anything that we use to cover our darkness. With those placements, it's time to make the darkness clear. The North Node likes to obscure things. It is the shadow that consumes the moon and creates lunar eclipses. So it's important to work with that energy and instead own the shadows and not hide them. Jupiter in the 6th can bring about new structures and your personal health routine and your daily routine. To simply take better care of yourself is one of the best ways to work with any transit moving through that 6th house. Perhaps structuring your life, doing a house cleaning, and doing a cleaning of things that really no longer serve. Saturn in the 5th, creating that square to Uranus, can mean that perhaps some challenges coming from creativity or your family can stifle that connection to the inner wild side, which is the 8th house stuff. So make sure that there's that balance between your creative work and your shadow work at this time for Libra Ascendant. Scorpio Ascendant has Venus in the 3rd house. So 3rd house is a review of your most intimate relationships and friendships. Are your friendships really serving you? Are your friends really there for you the way that you're there for them? Or are you really there for your friends the way that they're there for you? It's time to look at those things and strengthen bonds or cut away bonds as you review things. It can mean that relationships fall away or that new relationships begin, but what you do with your relationships at this time is going to have a lasting impact. Uranus in that 7th house, and North Node as well, can bring a desire for freedom within relationships. You might be striving for freedom even though you might be in some committed relationships or other forms of commitment. So be careful if there's a feeling of a limitation. With Saturn in the 4th, it could be a manifestation of childhood trauma rather than an actual experience. So be careful not to push too hard against others, especially as there's this 3rd house placement as well. But Jupiter in the 5th house means that it's a time for your creativity to thrive and express itself beautifully. So do use this time in the next 5 months and next year to harness your creative energy and express it in beautiful ways. Sagittarius Ascendant, Venus in the 2nd house. So Venus in the 2nd house, that's a Venus-ruled house, so this is really all about reevaluating your values and reevaluating your access to wealth, abundance, and possessions. So are you holding on to things too tightly, or are you not valuing those things enough? It's a time to review that and perhaps gain new value systems and have a new relationship with those things that you own. Jupiter in the 4th house means bringing blessings to your family and to your chosen family or into your home. Coming out of the 3rd house, you might have come from a time with great blessings with your friends and friendships. The North Node and Uranus in that 6th house can mean some challenges with health or challenges with routines. Uranus, as this is that house of daily routines, Uranus destabilizes things. So you might find that this has been and continues to be a confusing time of really figuring out how to structure your day-to-day life. And now Saturn in that 3rd house, it could indicate that friends or obligations to others is adding to that confusion and how to structure your life. So just make sure that with this, you take the time to really honor yourself and bring health-giving patterns into your life as well. Capricorn Ascendant, Venus in the 1st house. So this is a time of perhaps great changes to your identity or great changes to your appearance, as Ascendant rules appearance. You may want to redefine how you look or how you present yourself into the world, as that does have a great impact on others. Or it might be just simply refining your own sense of identity. When I had your Venus retrograde in my first house, I started getting tattoos. So that started out beautifully, but led to some challenges. So make sure that the changes that you make to your identity or appearance are fitting, and take it slowly from this time on. But yes, as it's changing your own identity, really look at old ways that you've seen yourself or presented to yourself, and ask if it really serves you. Perhaps you're evolving into something totally new and beyond what you've ever been before, and it's time to celebrate that. So having any retrograde in your first, more of a special initiation than any other house. It disconnected and reconnected for a second, so I'm not sure if anyone lost anything. But again, this first house is about those blah 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 changes to appearance, changes to identity. Take them with consideration and let go of old parts of your identity that no longer serve. Allow yourself to become something totally new. Jupiter in that third house brings blessings in relationships. You might have come from a time where that has brought you a lot of new resources or access to resources. Uranus in the fifth house is changing in your creative outlets and expressions. You might be expressing yourself and using your creative energy in new ways. And Uranus in that North Node in the fifth house also highlights that. Venus in the Aquarius Ascendant. Venus in the 12th house is perhaps involving some more psychic undoing. This can be a time for greater spirituality, meditation, dream work, undoing old mental patterns, reevaluating, reassessing your own connection to your inner self, as the 12th house is that inner self. Accessing your dreams. What are you really dreaming into being, and allowing those dreams to come into manifestation. Jupiter in the second house can bring an Aquarius Ascendant greater resources at this time. Jupiter coming out of the first house might mean that you've finally come to understand yourself and define yourself in new ways, and that's going to impact your values and your resources in positive ways. At the same time, Saturn's still in your first house, so you might still go through some personal struggles, especially as it squares Uranus in the fourth house. So struggles in your chosen family or in your home might come up. You might be seeking freedom or greater expansion in your home life, or you might be maybe redefining what family or home means to you at this time. Pisces Ascendant. Venus in the 11th house means a greater review of connections in your collective network and your personal expansion, or expansion in connection to the collective. Venus in that 11th house can mean also greater profits from your business, or reviewing perhaps what makes things less profitable than they could be. Jupiter in the first house is a great expansion to your sense of self, and it can bring you to, in a sense, birth yourself anew and celebrate a new version of you. Uranus in the third house, North Node in the third house, is bringing about some changes in your friendships and inner circle. You might be redefining what friends are to you and having great changes in your relationships. Saturn from that 12th house square could mean that there's some mental health challenges that are affecting your relationships. So it's important to take good care of your mental health, take care of your dreams and your dream work, and really get in touch with your innermost self to make sure that your behaviors don't have negative impacts on other people. Alright, those are the reports based on Ascendant. Hope that was helpful for you, and hope that this clarifies some things for everybody. Thank you again for watching and for tuning in. It's always a great gift to share with everybody. And if this benefits you, you can book a reading with me if you'd like. My website is dantestarshine.com. Also, You can send donations for these videos to dante.filippini@gmail.com or dantestarshine@gmail.com to PayPal, or at Dante55 to Venmo. I really appreciate those donations, and it supports me in continuing to share these videos freely. Recently I've got a couple different messages, some from people being like, give me free sessions or talk to me for free, total strangers, and that challenges me a little bit because I don't have the time to do that. I also got other emails from total strangers saying, hey, I'd love to donate to you, and I really like those emails because that gives me confidence that people really appreciate and value what I do and know that this is not my hobby, this is my work at this point, and I really don't have time to give to everybody for free. So when we create valued exchanges, it really supports me, and I thank you for offering your support and know that it goes a long way in my life and allows me to, again, continue to share these things. I'd love to do readings for you if you have personal questions, and of course the channeling sessions continue on Thursday, so I look forward to seeing you there, and wish you a lot of love and blessings, and hope you have the most fantastic day. So, look forward to catch you later. Much love, peace, and blessings for now, and catch you soon.